Do you know of that beauty at the sight of which the women of Egypt unknowingly cut their fingers? Have you heard of that tale of love which abandoned the luxuries of the royal palace and dissolved into dust? Today I will take you back in time, where beauty and purity came together in a magnificent harmony. Let us witness the immortal epic of Yusuf and Zulaikha. In the deserts of Canaan, a wondrous moonlight had descended. In the house of Yaqub alayhi salam, a child was born, whose forehead carried the nur, divine light of Jannah. He was named Yusuf. His smile sparkled like pearls, and in his eyes lay a deep, mysterious charm. His father, Yaqub, cherished him more than life itself. But this very love became a curse in the eyes of his brothers. The fire of jealousy began to burn within their hearts. One night, Yusuf saw a strange dream. He saw 11 stars, the sun and the moon, prostrating before him. When he innocently shared this dream with his father, Yaqub trembled with an unknown fear. He knew that this beloved son of his was no ordinary child. His destiny was destined for greatness. But who can change what fate has written? Through the conspiracy of his brothers, the Prince of Beauty, Yusuf, was thrown into a deep, dark well. In that darkness, he was all alone, surrounded by silence. But when the Creator himself is with someone, what is there to fear? At that very moment, a caravan traveling through the desert stopped near the well to quench their thirst. As they lowered a bucket, out came a radiant light. The leader of the caravan cried out, "What a wonder! This is a beautiful boy!" Yusuf was then taken to Egypt to be sold in the slave market. On the banks of the Nile, a new chapter of history began. Crowds gathered in the market to buy him, but who had the means to purchase such beauty? Finally, the Aziz of Egypt, the chief minister, bought him for a high price and brought him to his palace. In that royal palace lived a woman of beauty and intelligence, Zulaikha. She was the embodiment of elegance and pride. But the day Yusuf stepped into the courtyard of her palace, her heart seemed to stop for a moment. From behind a window, she saw a young man whose presence illuminated the entire palace. Zulaikha had seen many princes before, but never had she witnessed such nur, such serenity in anyone's eyes. An unfamiliar longing awakened within her heart. She gazed endlessly at Yusuf. It felt as if he was the one she had been waiting for across lifetimes. When Yusuf spoke, his voice sounded like a shower of sweetness to her ears. Unknowingly, Zulaikha murmured, "Who is this young man? Is he human or a heavenly angel?" Thus began a different kind of life. Yusuf grew up in the comfort of the palace, while in Zulaikha's heart that forbidden yet indescribable love began to grow slowly. Yusuf's purity of character and his dazzling beauty gradually pushed Zulaikha toward a state of madness. Every wall of the palace became a silent witness to an unspoken agony. Zulaikha longed for Yusuf to look at her just once, to smile at her even a little. But Yusuf was the embodiment of purity. His gaze always remained lowered. Zulaikha tried to enchant him with her immense wealth, power, and beauty, but she did not realize that a heart illuminated with the light of the Creator cannot be touched by the illusions of the world. On a silent night, when all of Egypt was asleep, Zulaikha stood before a mirror, admiring her beauty, and thinking, "Can I not win him with this beauty?" Just then, Yusuf passed by behind the curtain. The fragrance of his presence made her breath heavy. Zulaikha felt that this love was not an ordinary attraction. It was a thirst that would either destroy her slowly or give her a new life. But what really happened that night? Why did Zulaikha lock 7 doors? And how did Yusuf protect himself from that trial of fire?
In the corridors of the royal palace, the wheel of time was spinning rapidly. The young Yusuf had now grown into a full-fledged man. The radiance of his nur, divine light, seemed to cool even the scorching deserts of Egypt. His appearance carried a heavenly glow, and people, upon seeing him, would praise the greatness of the Creator. But the greatest admirer of this beauty was none other than the mistress of the palace herself, Zulaikha. Zulaikha spent her days longing for just a single glance of Yusuf. Her elegance, her royal pride, everything seemed to fade before Yusuf's pure smile. Standing before the mirror, she would question herself, "O Zulaikha, you are the most beautiful woman in Egypt. Then why does your heart bow so helplessly before a mere servant?" Yet deep down, she knew Yusuf was no ordinary servant. He seemed like a human angel by the banks of the Nile. Day by day, Zulaikha's love turned into obsession. She could no longer bear Yusuf's indifference. She wanted to confess her feelings, to make him her own. One quiet afternoon, Zulaikha devised an extraordinary plan. Inside the palace, she arranged a secret chamber hidden behind 7 rooms. Each room was adorned with intricate designs, and the air was filled with the fragrance of incense. On the pretext of some task, she called Yusuf into that final chamber. As Yusuf passed through each of the 7 doors and entered the room, Zulaikha locked each door one by one. In the enchanting light of that beautifully decorated chamber, Zulaikha stood, adorned in all her splendor. Looking at Yusuf, she said, "O Yusuf, look, today I have surrendered myself before you. No one will ever know about these 7 locked rooms. Today you and I shall become one." Yusuf, alayhi salam, stood stunned. A fear arose within his pure heart, not the fear of people, but the khawf of his Lord. In a calm yet firm voice he said, "O noble lady, my Lord has honored me. How can I disobey him? I cannot step onto this sinful path." Zulaikha, overwhelmed with emotion, reached the peak of desperation. She grabbed Yusuf's hand, but Yusuf, in order to protect his purity, ran towards the door. Miraculously, the doors that had been locked began to open one by one at his touch. Zulaikha chased after him and grabbed his shirt from behind. In that struggle, the back of Yusuf's shirt tore. At that very moment, as the final door opened, standing before them was the Aziz of Egypt, Zulaikha's husband. In an instant, the entire situation changed. To cover her own fault, Zulaikha shifted the blame onto Yusuf. She said, "What should be the punishment for the one who intended to dishonor your household?" The entire palace was thrown into chaos, but truth can never remain hidden. Through the testimony of an innocent child, or by the will of Allah, it was proven that Yusuf's shirt was torn from the back, meaning he was trying to escape, and Zulaikha had pulled him. The Aziz understood the truth and felt ashamed, but to preserve their social status and to satisfy Zulaikha's insistence, it was ultimately decided that the innocent Yusuf would be sent to prison. As Yusuf was being taken to the dark prison cell, there was no complaint on his face. He knew that compared to the sins of the royal palace, this dark prison was far more peaceful, for here he would be closer to his Lord. Meanwhile, the women of Egypt began to gossip about Zulaikha. They said, "The wife of the Aziz has gone mad in love with a servant? What shamelessness is this?" When these words reached Zulaikha, she adopted a strange strategy. She invited all the noble women of the city to a grand feast.
When Zulaikha saw that everyone was busy cutting fruits, at that very moment she ordered Yusuf to walk through the gathering. As Yusuf walked gracefully with enchanting steps through the middle of the assembly, the women of Egypt were overwhelmed by his heavenly beauty.
They lost their senses. Instead of cutting the fruits, they cut their own fingers, yet they felt no pain. In astonishment, they began to murmur, "This is no human, this is a noble angel." Zulaikha then smiled in triumph and said, "Now do you understand? This is the young man for whose love I have lost everything. You only glanced at him once and cut your fingers, while I burned day and night in the fire of his separation." Yusuf was sent to prison, and Zulaikha's royal palace turned into a desert. Every moment without Yusuf felt like poison to her. The glow of her beauty began to fade. Dark circles appeared under her eyes. The once proud queen had now become a sorrowful lover. Within the prison walls, Yusuf alayhi salam began to win hearts through the words of dreams and truth. But in Zulaikha's heart, only one name echoed: Yusuf, Yusuf. Was this love merely a physical attraction, or was there a deeper spiritual mystery hidden behind it? Would Yusuf remain in prison forever? And would this burning pain of Zulaikha ever come to an end? From the palace to the prison, and from the prison to the throne, the story of that incredible journey will unfold in the next part. In that dark prison cell, time itself seemed to stand still. But for Yusuf alayhi salam, that darkness was like a paradise of worship. Where the luxuries of the palace might have distanced him from the remembrance of Allah, this solitude brought him closer to his Lord. The worn-out walls, the earthen bed, and the salty air all seemed blessed by Yusuf's pure smile. The other prisoners who were there for their crimes began to feel remorse upon seeing Yusuf's radiant face and gentle behavior. They realized this young man was no ordinary person. Every word he spoke brought peace to their hearts. Meanwhile, in the royal palace of Egypt, Zulaikha's life was filled with sorrow. She had thought that sending Yusuf to prison would bring her peace, but instead, the fire in her heart burned even more intensely. Standing before the mirror, she no longer saw her beauty, only a guilty and longing lover. She would stand at the heights of the palace, gazing toward the sky in the direction of the prison where Yusuf was held. Tears became her constant companion. The pride of her nobility shattered and scattered like sand in the desert. One day, a strange incident occurred in the royal palace. The king of Egypt saw a terrifying dream. He saw 7 healthy cows being devoured by 7 lean and weak ones. Then he saw 7 green, fresh ears of grain being consumed by 7 dry ones. The king woke up sweating. All the great astrologers and scholars of Egypt were summoned, but none could interpret the dream. Everyone tried to dismiss it as a mere nightmare. At that very moment, the king's chief cupbearer, who had once been imprisoned with Yusuf, remembered that enchanting young man. Bowing before the king, he said, "O Majesty, there is a young man in the prison who can give the true interpretation of dreams. His name is Yusuf." By the king's order, the cupbearer rushed to the prison. Yusuf alayhi salam remained completely calm upon seeing him. He interpreted the dream, saying, "Egypt will have 7 years of abundant harvest, followed by 7 years of severe famine. Therefore, during the first 7 years, you should consume only a little and store the rest, so that people do not starve during the years of famine." Hearing this interpretation, the king was astonished. He realized this young man was no ordinary prisoner, but a great man. The king ordered that Yusuf be brought to the court with honor. But Yusuf alayhi salam set a firm condition. He said,
I will not leave the prison until the stain placed upon me is cleared. I want those women who cut their fingers to speak the truth. The king ordered an investigation. Those noble women, along with Zulaikha herself, were summoned. Standing face to face with the truth, all the hardness in Zulaikha's heart melted away like water. She could no longer hide it. In the full assembly she confessed loudly, "Now the truth has come to light.
Yusuf is innocent. It was I who tried to seduce him. Indeed, he is among the truthful." The entire court fell silent. The victory of truth spread across Egypt like the wind. Yusuf was released from prison with honor. The king, impressed by his wisdom and integrity, appointed him as the Minister of Finance and Food for Egypt. The same Yusuf who was once sold in the slave market was now seated near the throne, becoming the architect of Egypt's destiny. As Yusuf's honor rose higher, Zulaikha's life began to decline. After the death of the Aziz, her husband, she was left alone. Her glory faded, her power vanished, her wealth was gone. She became like a beggar in the eyes of people. Her eyesight weakened from crying in Yusuf's separation. Yet the love for the name Yusuf in her heart did not diminish even for a moment. The people of the city no longer recognized her as the beautiful queen of Egypt. They saw her as a frail old woman sitting by the roadside, waiting for Yusuf's caravan to pass. Whenever Yusuf rode through the royal road on his majestic horse, dust would rise in the air. Zulaikha would gather that dust and place it upon her eyes, for it carried the touch of Yusuf. People would laugh and say, "Look how cruel love can be." But Zulaikha remained indifferent. She had now realized that her love was not for a mortal body. It was an unconscious longing for the divine light within Yusuf, a connection to the Creator. In her heart she would whisper, "O Yusuf, today you sit upon the throne, and I lie in the dust of your love. But do you know, this dust is now my greatest treasure." Time continued to pass. The dark clouds of famine began to gather over Egypt, just as Yusuf alayhi salam had foretold. But the people of Egypt remained at peace because Yusuf worked night and day as their savior. Through his justice and honesty, he won the hearts of all. Yet, in the silence of night, when Yusuf looked at the stars in the sky, he would remember his brothers, his father, and that dark well. He did not know that a great turning point in his story was still yet to come. During this harsh famine, would Yusuf meet his brothers again? And what was written in the destiny of the frail Zulaikha? The beautiful mystery of love and divine love will be unveiled in the next part. The sky of Egypt turned gray, the waters of the Nile dropped to low levels, and the fields cracked open in dryness. Cries of despair echoed everywhere. Yet the royal granaries of Egypt were full, thanks to the foresight of Yusuf alayhi salam. From distant lands people came seeking a handful of grain. And among that crowd, one day, 10 foreign travelers arrived at the royal court of Egypt. They were none other than Yusuf's 10 brothers, the very ones who had once thrown him into darkness.
Yusuf alayhi salam, seated upon the throne, recognized them. The marks of age were visible on their faces, along with the fatigue of poverty. But they could not recognize their younger brother, the one they had once sold as a slave. Yusuf remembered the darkness of that well, that painful loneliness. Yet his heart was filled with an ocean of forgiveness. He did not treat them harshly. Instead, with great kindness, he filled their sacks with grain. However, through a wise plan, he detained their younger brother Binyamin, so that he could receive news of his father Yaqub alayhi salam. In this play of separation, Yusuf alayhi salam was a patient actor, for he knew that Allah's plan is above all. Meanwhile, in a distant corner of the city, near an abandoned bend of the Nile, stood a small hut. There lived an old woman. Her clothes were worn and patched, and she had lost her eyesight many years ago. She was none other than the former queen of Egypt, Zulaikha. She had given away all her wealth to the poor.
Her beauty had been burned to ashes in the fire of separation. Yet on her lips there remained only one name, Yusuf, O my Yusuf. Zulaikha was no longer the proud woman she once was. She had now found the path to her Lord. One night she stood before an idol she had once worshipped, crying, but receiving no response. Suddenly she cried out, "O stone, I called upon you so many times, yet you could not bring my Yusuf back to me. Today I turn to the Lord of Yusuf, the one who knows all hearts." Zulaikha fell into sajda, prostration. That night, an extraordinary peace descended upon her heart. She realized that attaining Yusuf was not the ultimate goal. Attaining the one whom Yusuf worshipped was the true love. The next morning, Yusuf's royal caravan passed through the streets of Egypt. The sound of horses' hooves echoed through the air. By the roadside stood the blind Zulaikha. Though she could not see, she sensed through the fragrance in the air that her beloved Yusuf was passing by. She cried out loudly, "Glory be to the one who made a slave into a king through his obedience, and turned a queen into a beggar because of her sin." That voice reached the ears of Yusuf alayhi salam. That familiar tone, which once echoed in the palace halls, was now trembling in the dust. Yusuf stopped his horse. He saw an old woman, her body trembling. Approaching her, he asked gently, "Who are you, mother? Why do you cry out like this?" Zulaikha trembled. That voice, the very voice she had waited for all these years. With tearful eyes, she said, "I am that unfortunate Zulaikha, who once was blinded by the attraction of your beauty, and today is left destitute in the love of your Lord." Yusuf alayhi salam was stunned. Before him stood the once most beautiful woman of Egypt. He could not believe how the cruelty of time had changed a person so much. Tears flowed from Yusuf's eyes as he felt her pain. Zulaikha said, "O Yusuf, today I have no beauty, no youth, no sight, but in my heart I carry the nur of your Lord. I only wish to see you once. Will you make a prayer so that these blind eyes of mine may see again?" Yusuf alayhi salam raised his hands towards the sky. He prayed to Allah for that noble woman who had lost everything but found the truth. Miraculously, Zulaikha's eyesight was restored. She opened her eyes and saw before her the man of her dreams, that radiant figure. The light of Yusuf's face illuminated her dark life in a single moment.
Not only that, by the infinite power of Allah, Zulaikha's old age was lifted. She regained her lost youth and beauty. But this time, her beauty was even more gentle and heavenly than before, because it was a beauty shaped by sacrifice and faith. Yusuf alayhi salam understood that this transformation of Zulaikha was no ordinary event. It was a divine union. Across Egypt, news of this miraculous event spread. People witnessed how arrogance leads to downfall, while humility and love elevate a person to greatness. The reunion of Yusuf alayhi salam and Zulaikha was not merely the union of two individuals, it was an epic victory of patience and faith. The royal palace of Egypt was now adorned in a different splendor. The air carried the fragrance of joy, and even the waves of the Nile seemed to sing in celebration. Yusuf's 11 brothers stood there with bowed heads, their hearts filled with regret for their past mistakes. Yusuf alayhi salam forgave them instantly. He said, "Today I have no complaint against you. May Allah forgive you." He then gave his shirt to his brothers and said, "Take this to my father. When you place it over his eyes, his sight will return. Then bring my entire family to Egypt." As the brothers set out towards Canaan, hundreds of miles away, the elderly father Yaqub alayhi salam suddenly sat upright.
He said, "I can smell the scent of Yusuf. If you do not think me mad, then know this, Yusuf is alive." When that shirt was placed over his eyes by a miraculous nur, divine light, his blind eyes were restored. He could see again. After decades, the tears of the father finally came to an end. With a great caravan, they set out towards Egypt. At the borders of Egypt, Yusuf alayhi salam himself went forward to istiqbal, welcome his father. Stepping down from his horse, he fell into his father's embrace. After a long separation, that reunion between father and son was so powerful that even the angels of the heavens seemed to fall silent. Yaqub alayhi salam, having found his lost jewel, wept endlessly. Yusuf alayhi salam reminded him of his dream, the 11 stars, the sun and the moon now bowing before him. The promise of Allah had been fulfilled. Zulaikha, who had sacrificed everything and found her creator, was now a transformed soul. When Yusuf alayhi salam saw that she had regained her youth and beauty, and that her heart was now filled only with the love of Allah, the angel Jibril alayhi salam brought glad tidings from Allah. By divine command, the marriage of Yusuf and Zulaikha was arranged. The same Zulaikha who once went mad trying to attain Yusuf behind 7 locked doors in the palace, today she was united with him in a pure and sacred bond. On the night of their marriage, when Yusuf alayhi salam entered Zulaikha's chamber, he saw an astonishing change. Zulaikha was no longer lost in worldly desire. She was sitting on her prayer mat, deeply absorbed in the worship of Allah. Yusuf alayhi salam smiled gently and said, "Zulaikha, today I have come to you. Why are you still absorbed in the remembrance of your beloved, Allah?" Zulaikha lifted her enchanting eyes. A heavenly peace rested upon her lips. She said, "O Yusuf, when I knew you but did not know your Lord, I was madly in love with you. But when I came to know your Lord, His love filled my heart so deeply that no other love of this world could find space within it. Today, I love you only because you are beloved to my Lord." Yusuf alayhi salam looked at her in admiration. Their married life became a unique example of love, devotion, and sacrifice. They lived in peace and happiness. Zulaikha proved that when worldly love transforms into spiritual love, the Creator Himself completes that love. The story of Yusuf and Zulaikha teaches us, no matter how much we lose, if we do not lose faith, one day everything can be regained. The path of truth is not always easy, but its end is as beautiful as paradise.